Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's the first day of February 2013. My name is Doug Owen, and I'm enjoying all of the security theater surrounding the Super Bowl. I hope you are as well. We're doing this thing once again live Saturday morning. 10 a.m. Central Standard Time is where you can find myself and the crew hanging out at blacklistedRadio.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at BLN Radio, and of course online at blacklistedRadio.com. You can join the interactive chat room that is available for you free of charge, and you will meet some of the ambassadors like JG, CP304, and others that join us during this live Saturday morning broadcast, where we talk about some of the latest headlines, a week in review from blacklistednews.com. It's usually pretty fun, and you can also interact with the show. Yes, 512-222-3067 is the text line. We get all those texts. Some of them we read online. So it's a great way to be part of the show and to interact with it. Got some great feedback. A little bit delayed from a couple shows past. Trying to think of it here. It's been a weird morning. The internets have not been working that well. So actually, I'm pretty excited that we've been able to actually launch this show and everything is going according to plan, at least somewhat. So let's just talk about the security theater. If you're not in the United States of America, you may not realize what a huge, huge deal the Super Bowl has become. So basically, these overpaid ticket holders are going to New Jersey. The whole thing's being billed as New York, and that just shows you how disingenuous right from the jump it has become. Because I don't want to say New Jersey. My God, don't say New Jersey. It's New York. Well, whatever. It's new something. It's new security theater. So I was looking at some of the headlines surrounding this. Each and every year, they talk about the robot dogs they have. They talk about the technology, the three-dimensional graphical radar being deployed for who knows, really, but, they have the blimps above scanning the crowds. You have snipers. They have a whole piece here about the snipers, and this comes from My 9, New Jersey. Along with excited and eager fans, SWAT teams and snipers will be attending Super Bowl XLVIII. The reason for such high precautions is because the Super Bowl is a level 1 national security event. So, oops, that's not what I wanted to happen. I wanted to give it the, bastard. There you go. It's very exciting. And I am just kind of floored by the whole thing and how far it's gone. So I'm watching TV just for a moment yesterday as I was eating dinner, and they had CNN on. And they're breaking through. We played it last week where Greenspan's wife, Andrea Mitchell, she doesn't go by the Greenspan name. I guess it would be too obvious. But Andrea Mitchell interrupted a U.S. senator talking about the NSA Spygate to give us breaking news about Justin Bieber being arrested. Well, he made headlines yesterday, and I think it's important because he is the distraction of the week. He is the guy that is making more headlines than all of the other crazy stuff that's happening in the background. I mean, complete chaos in Bangkok, complete chaos in the Ukraine. We have the economy and the political atmosphere. Not to mention, I don't know how many different scandals of epic proportion are on the plate. But people are worried about his private jet. He landed in New York with dad and groupies in tow, and his private jet smelled of cannabis. Now, it's a big freaking deal. They've got Black Hawk helicopters on alert. They've got a no-fly zone over the Met. Is it the Met Bowl? Maybe. They got F-16s. Homeland Security's there. Oh, yeah, some of the theater. There's white packages of stuff coming into the area, and they're on top of it. Turns out to be cocaine. So they're busting up all these people's parties and their hookers and the rest of it, which is probably pretty saddening. I mean, you pay $10,000 for a Super Bowl ticket. You want to drink it in. You want to enjoy the festivities. at the maximum level. I mean, you're already in for $10,000. You might as well get the hookers and the cocaine and the rest of it, because, I mean, the biggest purchase was just getting there, and the hardest part is just dealing with the security, getting touched, getting TSA raped. And not just when you get to the stadium, when you get onto the trains, the TSA continues to metastasize like a disgusting cancer tumor. They're everywhere. Let's see. Some of the other great headlines that we have. Facebook looks to nab Twitter's second screen of the crown. Oh, yeah, the DEA and ICE doing what they do best, and that is tracking down people that are making a few bucks off of, some likely or likeness of Peyton Manning's big forehead. Oh, get these guys. They're making so much money. Let's bring the DEA in, which has nothing to do with drugs, but they have a task force. They have private mercenary contractors. It works well. I mean, it's just a mess. It's so ridiculous, and it shows you how completely compromised and bought out the mainstream media is. Number one, not that most of the people listening to this podcast need a lot of reasons to believe that the powers that be and the media are in collusion to keep you in a nice, happy shell of ignorance. But, it's a pretty crazy focal point. And it brings up a lot of things that we see societally. I mean, you can look at this. It's kind of a microcosm of this society. The breads and circuses, the security theater, the love, the lust, and the perversion of the military into this sexual phallic entity. I don't know. It's just I have to watch, not because I'm a huge fan of football. This Charlie McGrath made me out to be on Doomcast number 26. You can pick it up at doomcast.com. But because it's just this ridiculous consumer fanfare. A lot of people just watch the Super Bowl for the commercials, which seems pretty ridiculous. Most people do everything they can do possibly to get out of watching commercials. But for this magical festivity, people are all in on it, and the prop bets, those are fun. Okay, you can figure out, okay, well, what's the coin toss going to be? People bet thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on all of the prop bets, whether or not the power will go out in the stadium like it did last year. So I'm not anticipating anything really big to happen at the Super Bowl. Of course, many people are concerned. False flag, active shooter. That's why they have the snipers. And if you go to blacklistednews.com, you can find a great interview with the SWAT team snipers and why they are so important during something this big. And I would imagine at most NFL games and most big sporting events, they do have snipers. Actually, the Free Talk Live guys, if you're not familiar, there's a radio show called Free Talk Live, and they're kind of the spokespeople for at least the radio presence for the I'm trying to think of it. They have the porcupine vest. They're free marketeers. They are definitely anarchists. They're part of the Free State Project. That's what I'm trying to think of, which is where they need upwards of 30,000 people to move to New Hampshire, more or less, to be able to actually start affecting and using their mass amount of people as political leverage to change policy and to push New Hampshire into a more freer place. And the results vary. A lot of political activism, which is sometimes very well placed, and I think it's great when it comes to nullification and jury awareness and jury nullification. But at the same time, you piss off a lot of people, and if people don't get it when they see your activism, it doesn't necessarily compel them. I'm telling you, it's horrible in Austin, Texas. I cannot breathe during this podcast. I am literally just coughing phlegm left and right. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Other people in the area, it's hilarious. I just listen to all these commentators and other radio shows, and everybody's like, you're like, yeah, well, yeah. Welcome to the allergy capital of the world. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress there, but the whole deal here is just kind of crazy, and the amount of time and effort and money that's being put into all of this, the security theater. Oh, that's where I was going. I was going with the guys up there. They went to some event. They had some like little local parade fair thing going on. That it wasn't a Free State Project event, but it was just a get together, and there were snipers on the buildings, and a lot of people took pictures of them because it's kind of eerie. It's really kind of disturbing to think that there are people out there that would shoot you, number one, because they are crazy or Manchurian mind ops, and B, that you have to have snipers for your local festival on top of the buildings just waiting for an active shooter. But, you can see it both on both levels. If you're a guy that works in a SWAT team, it makes a lot of sense. You could shoot somebody in the head before they shoot 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people. And if you have a place where you have everyone, like the Super Bowl, completely disarmed, then what are they going to do? I mean, there's nothing that they have on them that will protect them. You can get your kids and yourself some of those bulletproof backpacks or the Trapper Keepers that are bullet shields. They do sell those. If you're going to the World Cup, you can actually get yourself a shank-proof vest. And when I think about that, and I look at all of this, I cannot see why anyone would want to go to the Super Bowl. Having to deal with all of that, plus the money. I mean, forget the fact that you have to go through 5 or 6 checkpoints. I mean, you're basically being treated like a Palestinian going through these security checkpoints. And if you've seen those, actually, Taylor Swift, is it Taylor Swift? I don't keep up with them, but one of those chicks, I'm trying to think of her name. I don't think it's Taylor Swift. Anyway, she was working with this company called Oxfam, and Oxfam works with the Palestinian Authority and keeping those people in check. And it's an Israeli company, and another one, SodaStream, has kind of come to the forefront as apartheid supporters, and so there's been a row over that. It seems that these sporting events are becoming more politicized by the moment. That's why I think it's important to talk about it. You have Sochi coming up, Sochi, Russia, the Winter Olympics in 2014. This year, can't believe we're already into February, but we are rolling along. We have the World Cup in Brazil, and people are pissed off. You would not know it if you were watching television in this country, but if you have been paying attention to headlines, you'll realize that there is a huge contention. And it warms my heart that people are actually protesting their government wasting billions of dollars on something as trivial and novel as a sporting event. I mean, think about this. We beg for it here in the United States. We grovel for it. We want to see the F-16s fly above. We want a surveillance blimp watching us 24 hours a day. We not only want it, we demand it. We're upset. We might even sue if we don't get it. And it's not just at a Super Bowl level. You go to a college football game, you're going to have military flyovers. And if you think about the money that is wasted on all of these things to these salutes to the military-industrial complex, you should be upset. So the people in Brazil, they have awoken to the scam that is the World Cup, and they're pissed off about it. Not just one or two people, not just people starting a blog or complaining about it on Facebook or Twitter. I'm talking about tens of thousands of people starting to activate and go to the streets to bring international awareness. And your fine, compromised mainstream media. It doesn't even do you the due service of letting you know that it's happening right now. So I think that there's more focus on the upcoming Sochi Olympics because, of course, there is the anti-gay aspect to it, and there is a lot of fear about whether or not there will be a terrorist attack. There's been tons of threats, and if you think the Super Bowl, which I don't even think has been much of a global target for Al-Qaeda, or at least the mainstream pundits haven't told us about. Usually they hype these things up and tell us, well, we don't have any specific information. We don't have any specific intel or actionable intel to say that there is going to be a plot, but there could be, kids. There could be. Whoa. Sometimes they have that going on in the background, and we haven't seen that so much, or at least I haven't noticed that meme being pushed, that there is this, threat. But with the Sochi Olympics, we've already seen several insider attacks and the Black Widows. I mean, the whole backstory to it is pretty interesting. And coupled with the anti-gay laws, ostensibly, that Putin has pushed forward. Actually, one of the great listeners of this podcast and a few others that I enjoy, like No Agenda, Brian sent over a white paper, and we published that at blacklistednews.com, where he goes through point by point how this law does not pertain. Number one, it does not say gay people or transgendered people. It doesn't identify anyone as being a certain sexual persuasion. So when we hear that it's going against it's targeting gays and those from alternative lifestyles, it's just not true. And so much of it, 90% of what you've heard on the TV is just not true when it comes to what this law is about. And even if it was, let's just say it was the most horrible law in the world, and it was really anti-gay, and they would round up people and stone them for being gay. That is what some of our grandest partners in crime, and I say I mean the West's partners in the Middle East, do on a daily basis, and it's not a big deal. And the other hypocrites out there that are Iran lovers. You love the Iranians. You love Iran. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government. They can do no wrong because they support the Palestinians or they support Hezbollah or whatever group that you think is being oppressed by the Israelis. They turn a blind eye to the fact that they will stone and kill people for these moral discrepancies. So it's not to say that they're any worse than any of these other guys. But Russia, pales in comparison to these international human rights violators that we consider allies in democracy. So I don't know why anybody's getting, even if it was a draconian law, they're not going to start rounding up the ice skaters. It's not happening. And if gay people were being rounded up in Russia, you would know about it. You would definitely know about it. There'd be a big deal. The Russian government has not put forth any law, nor could they. And that's what Putin really stressed. We can't pick up all these people, even if I didn't like them in some of his more candid interviews, which are really hard for me to break down because I don't know how much of it's really true or accurate, really. Case in point, there was an interesting interview with Vladimir Putin that the girls over at RT did, I don't know, about 4 months back. And one of them, a very vocal anti-U.S. Type, I forget her name, one of the blondes, she was just going at it. How can you let the U.S. get away with what they're doing in Syria? Why aren't you stepping in? Because she really sees this guy as a hero and maybe even a sex figure or, sex symbol to herself. So she's kind of in awe of him, and I get it. They don't know what they're doing. They're around this multi-billionaire, and they're like, oh, why aren't you doing something about the evil U.S.? And he's all, oh, well, you are putting me in a compromised position when you ask me such questions. Ha, ha, ha. And so he tries to play it off, basically telling her, look, shut your mouth or you're going to end up in the gulag. So she kept pressing, and you could tell the RT interpretation of what was being said was completely off, and he's saying things, and the interpreter is not reciting this. So he didn't get really upset. I mean, they didn't grab him. It's not like China, one of our business partners. They didn't just grab her and take her to the gulag with the FSB or anything. But you could tell that whatever he said, he was being coy, like, look, I really can't say anything about this. And this was right leading up to the talks. I think it was the G20. It was one of those big confabs. Nonetheless, regardless, the point is that you can't really trust what RT's saying, although they're doing much better unbiased reporting than any of the U.S. media organizations that are on my television set. It's not to diminish it. It's just to say that people, well, maybe he was just making some other kind of funny reference that U.S. Viewers would not get. Maybe that's what he was doing, and I don't know. Maybe because I don't speak Russian. It's the big problem. I wish Putin spoke English. I was watching him talk with Van Rompuy and Mario Barrasso about the future of Ukraine and Russia, the World Trade Organization, and where it's all going. And, of course, I can understand these other two yahoos, but Putin, what he's saying, you have to trust the interpreters, and I often do not. So there you go. Now, as we move forward towards the Sochi 2004 Olympics, we'll see probably more security theater, and it's going to be interesting because it really is a hallmark of those that are honest with themselves. If you don't talk about the security clampdown, the unconstitutionality of what Vladimir Putin is doing in Russia, and you hearken on the U.S. government, or you glorify one because you find it opposed to the other. I understand that my government, I pay them taxes. Okay, they are my behest, or they should be. They are our children to scorn and punish. They are, that's what they are. They are children. They only do what we want them to do, right? That's what people think. Government are just a bunch of kids, 545 of them that will do whatever they are paid to do. And so if you don't shame them, if you don't punish them for what they do, they continue on and on and on and on. I mean, if you look at just the ridiculous out-of-touchness that you find with the political elite, you quickly realize that not only are they somewhat sinister, but they just don't know what's going on. They really don't know what's going on at all. Nancy Pelosi, I mean, every time she opens her mouth, I think it is just another case in point of why things are done the way that they are. That there's just no there's no sense to any of it. It's because this lady's bat-ass crazy. Bat-ass crazy. So, all right. I wanted to talk about this story that I found, and I think that you're not going to find a lot of coverage of it, but it came from Truth Revolt, which is a website I've been following a lot lately. Seems somewhat mainstream blog-ish. They've got a big following, and this is the headline. Malik Obama linked to Hamas. Jerusalem is ours. We are coming. Okay. Now, Barack Obama's family is very enigmatic. I mean, he's one of the few presidents. He's the only president that you can find pictures of his naked wife, or excuse me, his naked mother on the internet. Strikes me as odd, right there. I mean, okay, he has a white mom that you can find naked pictures of. Kind of weird. Who's his dad? We don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of questions and documentary films about who actually may be the bastard child's father. We don't know. I guess it really doesn't matter. But when it comes to his brothers and his sisters, his siblings, I mean, they pop up in all sorts of weird places. He's got this uncle that continues to get drunk and mow down people and has been caught over and over again, breaking laws, and kind of above the law guy. Just this brother who's kind of probably a liability to the White House. Then you've got the Kenyan. You've got who lives in Swaller. And then you got Malik here. Okay, so I was not familiar with Malik, but the Daily Caller, which is very right-tinted, reported, quote, that Luis Lerner gave the president's half-brother special treatment, granting approval for a suspicious charity organization in less than a month. That's right, he started a 501c3. An unprecedented timeline, while legitimate conservative organizations across the country were deliberately delayed by the IRS for many years. Lerner personally granted Malik's organization nonprofit status. Lerner even carried out the favor further, breaking tax exemption norms by retroactively extending the exemption for the charity, which at that point had been operating illegally for many years. So just not paying taxes, we're going to retroactively give him this tax-exempt status. It's a scam through and through, and the fact that this was fast-paced shows the heavy hand of the Obama, and that he definitely had somebody in his administration coax this, and it shows you that he will micromanage individual issues, pet peeves, and family matters through the system, through the political powers that he has. I mean, the IRS has been a gun for Barack Obama. He has used it often. So anyway, now Malik Obama ties with Hamas have come to light, and this is odd. This kind of goes with that whole right-wing push that he is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, although, you don't hear all of them talk about that so much now that the Muslim Brotherhood is being considered as a terrorist organization by the Egyptians. So, all of that domination by the Muslim Brotherhood, the left hand of the Obama administration, some of that's kind of dying down because they're not doing so well anymore. And every idea's time comes, and that one may have already passed. Anyway, so he has this Hamas scarf. There's this picture of him where he popped up, and I like the tint on this because, of course, they make you think that he's anti-Israel. So now Malik Obama's ties with Hamas have come to light, as documented by Walid Shubat and Ben Barak. Malik has long been linked to Hamas, even proudly posting on his organization's website an image of himself in 2010 wearing a Hamas scarf that reads, "Jerusalem is ours, we are coming," and featuring a map of Palestine that reads, "From the river to the sea." Basically, that whole let's push Israel into the sea idea is invoked. Shubat and Barak also present images of Malik and al-Dahab in Sudan in the 2010 Islamic Dawa Organization Conference, which was presided over by the Sudanian leader, the terrorist organizer, Omar al-Bashir. You may be familiar with him. He has a little bit more notoriety, who belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood and is wanted for crimes against humanity. Definitely not a nice guy. Not that the Israelis or what they do in Palestine is ever justified. Not that using white phosphorus and biological weapons on the Palestinians is ever excusable. It is not. But it shows you this dichotomy. All of this stemming from this region of the world, and how much of that really does dictate foreign policy extending outward, even to the U.S. But, I just find it ironic. I do, people. If you look at what George Bush said for a moment when talking about 9/11, he said that anyone that knows these people will be sought after and that they will get justice. Basically saying that, and I paraphrase, that anybody that has ties and links to bin Laden will be gone after. They will go after them, and they will find justice, whatever that means. And then when you look at George W. Bush, you realize this guy started an oil company with bin Laden's brother on September 11th, when no one else in this country was allowed to fly. They fast-tracked these people out of the country, the bin Laden family. So I think about that. I'm like, wow. You talk about one of the most notorious and famous terrorists in the world now. Was already, very, very internationally renowned. Not in a good way. The bin Laden family has this political elite status. And George Bush, as much as anyone, was directly linked to bin Laden. So it's just the hypocrisy of that. You see that same thing here with Malik and Obama. Barry and his brother Malik. Okay? You're part of a terrorist organization and you're hanging out in Palestine. I mean, are these guys all just ops? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, how can you really just be tied to just this many weird, powerful people in the world? I don't know. I mean, we have hundreds of millions of Americans that live in this country. And, I mean, how many people do you know that know terrorist organizers, financiers? I mean, Michelle Obama, her brother is a high-level college coach. He coaches basketball. I mean, these guys are so prominent and very affluent, but yet they have all these ties to these organizations in the Middle East that are terrorists, that are, catalyzing what's happening with the U.S. security theater that we see playing out in New York City right now. Talking about taxes and the ability to pull the wool over the sheep's eyes. The fact that the NFL is a tax-exempt organization, they pay no taxes. They reel in billions of dollars. So much so that they actually use our security apparatus to go after the people for daring to go after their trademarks and making a damn penny. All of the money that they take and give to charity goes to their own Hall of Fame, which idolizes themselves. And Richard Goodell, he makes more money than Jamie Dimon. People were, just disgusted by the fact that they found out that Jamie was making $20 million a year. I mean, at least they're known scumbags. They're forthright with what they do. They use usury and debt serfdom to make money. They're for profit, and that's what they do. They make profits not only for themselves, not so much for the Muppets, but other people in their organization. Yeah, it's a big scam. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's no defending what they do. But I'm just saying, and yeah, it is probably way worse societally, the impact that they have. But he doesn't make as much money as the NFL commissioner, who is running the biggest scam in this country. Senator Coburn, I think, and a few others are starting to take note. And thanks to the internet and more of you out there becoming aware of this, they are going to probably have to reel that in, but only after making billions and billions and billions of dollars and using this as a way to, promote consumerism to the nth degree. As I already mentioned, the fact that people watch the Super Bowl just for commercials is pretty weird. Anyway, with this whole story about Malik, more to come. More weird people to pop up in Obama's life. More weird coincidences. And the fact that he's tied to so many terrorist organizations only leads me to believe that he is the second coming of George W. Bush. George W. Bush 2.0. I've got a funny little anecdote. I get a lot of these political newsletters, one of which was from this political action committee or scam called I'mReadyForHillary.com. So anyway, I saw this in my email box, and I thought, okay, well, maybe there's a story here. She's ready to jump in. They already have the political action committee putting together plans for 2016. I mean, here we are. We're in 2014, only 2 years to sell the idea. So I saw that you get a free bumper sticker. They'll give you one. It says I'mReadyForHillary.com. And I thought, wow, that's got to be pretty effective at really pissing people off. That's what I thought immediately. This bumper sticker will really irritate people. If I put it on somebody's car or my own car, I'll basically be able to real-life troll people. Driving around Central Texas with a I'mReadyForHillary.com bumper sticker on my truck would get me some pretty interesting stares as I drove around, which would be hilarious for me. Unless, somebody really gets upset. I'm tired of this, and tries to punch me, at a stoplight or something. But I wouldn't think that would happen. But Anyway, I get home and I've been waiting for this bumper sticker for a while to come. I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do with this thing? I've got all these little subplots in my mind. I come home and I see that my wife immediately had ripped that in half. Now, I was very proud of her for ripping it in half because it is garbage. It is garbage political propaganda, but I didn't want her to rip it in half. So she was very nice and she put it together with Scotch tape, and we're still plotting what to do with the "I'm ready for Hillary" bumper sticker. And if you have any ideas, you can text me 512-222-3067 or email them to me at doug@blacklistednews.com, and we'll put those up. If you know anything about Malik Obama and his ties to Hamas, and maybe there really is a war between the neocons and anti-neocons and the Muslim Brotherhood and that going on, the Muslims in our own executive branch. Maybe that's really happening. Maybe it's just a lot more bull crap. Speaking of which, Walmart, I think it's interesting because they're pretty straightforward about it. Food stamp cuts, $8 billion in cutting food stamps. That's $8 billion, maybe not $8 billion. That's $7 billion that we're not getting. That's $7 billion of profits that they're not going to be taking in. And when you think about $8 billion being cut from food stamps, whether you're pro or against, it's a lot of money that's going to be not being circulated in the system. And I'm not for government subsidies. I'm just saying that there is a reality to it. So CNN yesterday put this out. Walmart stores warned Friday that cuts to the nation's food stamps program late last year will hurt the bottom line. The cut in food stamps went into effect November 1st. Food stamps had been increasing during the height of the recession, but the expansion expired without congressional action. The expiration of the program saved the government. They're now saying it's $5 billion. Needless to say, a lot of money that won't be going Walmart's way. So a lot of people say, well, my God, these people, they're douchebags. They're definitely on the dole with all of this food stamp money. What's happening here? Now, recently, J.P. Morgan exited the food stamp business. People said, huh? What? Why would J.P. Morgan why are they exiting this business? It should be pretty lucrative. Then when you realize the government's going to reduce the amount of food stamps, it might not be as profitable. But they had the inside track. That's what it tells you. They had the inside track to all of this. So the fact that they're cutting back through this farm bill, which is something that is, it's going to affect the economy maybe even more than TPP, which is not getting nearly enough attention, although there are more people becoming aware, and there are more of these documents being leaked. I don't know how much TPP will actually affect the people in the United States of America or respectively other countries, or how much of it will actually make it through. We're already seeing much of it being dismantled by the stakeholders and these corporations, the Fortune 500s, they themselves, because the profit potential for them is not there. There are also some interesting things happening in the background. Supreme Court looking at fair use, which is going to be even bigger, I think, because fair use means that you can quote people. Okay, I can quote you when you say something. Fair use allows people to expand upon other works and other creations, artistic creations, and beyond, political philosophies, ideas. So fair use is very important. It's at the heart of what I consider free speech in this country, and it allows us to be able to expand and to collectively create. At the same time, you have a balance with those property rights holders, intellectual property that is, I think, near and dear to many people, and it's important with innovation. If you're going to make something, and I've had a friend who put together a pretty cool invention that would basically, it was for fishing. This guy's a total angler, and it was a fishing net that he had pretty much patented, and he was looking at trademarking. Nonetheless, became this big deal, and you realize Well, there's only one or two things that you can do. You can either put it on the market, you can either try to sell it to stores and see if you can get some shelf space. That's what he did with Cabela's and a few other sporting goods companies, Dick's, Academy. There's a few others that he worked with and put it on the market. And within a year, there's already competitors out there using the exact same thing, and he could find his products in the Chinese market. But I think it highlights that he did just dandy with it, and he was actually able to make a lot of money off a pretty good idea. And what it was really about was kind of helping other fishermen, in his mind, to have a better go at it. And so ultimately what happened was he made a little money. It was a decent little business, but the ability for him, because he's not a mega corporation, he's not a Microsoft, he's not a Google, the ability for him to regulate that and to actually keep other people out of the market was nil. But if he had gone through some business, some huge company that could provide him that protection, the amount of profit he would have actually ultimately put in his pocket would have been less. So it's just better to kind of go out there into the market with things. And somebody else says, okay, well, that's a great design. I'm going to make one a little bit better. And that's where intellectual property rights and even fair use are, I think, at the forefront of it, or at least should be, of the political discussion around rights. Because we don't have our own intellectual property, and not that it doesn't need to be absolutely looked at and revised, but if we don't have the balance between the ability to take things and to expand upon them, we can't really build new technologies. I mean, if somebody said, hey, this is the transistor, I own the transistor, and none of you can use this, you all have to pay me for the use of semiconductors, that would have been something that would have stymied us. We might not even have personal computers at this point. The technology itself would have never expanded to the level of where it's at today. We wouldn't enjoy some of the things that we have at our fingertips, literally, if it wasn't for fair use and the ability to expand upon ideas. All right, so that's happening in the background, and I think it's going to be one of the big talking points that you'll find at EFF and TechCrunch and a few other sites that are focusing on it, and you should, because we're covering it at blacklistednews.com too, and it's something that's going to directly affect most Americans for sure, and people of the world. So I do think it's bigger and it has more power behind it than even maybe TPP. Now, yesterday I saw this, and I was pretty blown away by it. It's pretty much an admission that all of you out there that questioned radiating yourselves for the sake of finding out if you have cancer and keeping you safe and proactive is bullcrap. So I give applause to the New York Times for bringing this to our attention, and it does show you this diversion. And that's happening in the health world a lot right now. I'm going to talk about that. But this is the headline. We are giving ourselves cancer. Despite great strides in prevention and treatment, cancer rates remain stubbornly high and may soon surpass heart disease as the leading cause of death in the United States. Increasingly, we and many other experts believe that an important culprit may be our own medical practices. We are silently irradiating ourselves to death. The use of medical imaging with high-dose radiation, CT scans in particular, has soared in the last 20 years. Our resulting exposure to medical radiation has increased more than sixfold between the 1980s and 2006, according to the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements. The radiation doses of CT scans, a series of X-ray images from multiple angles, are 100 to 1,000 times higher than conventional X-rays. Of course, early diagnosis thanks to medical imaging can be life-saving. True, we can't deny that. Okay, it is true that, hey, look, we found a tumor. before it metastasizes, we cut it out of there. Maybe we use an electron knife. I mean, there are benefits, but radioactive medicine, which just seems counterintuitive to me. Okay, we're gonna cure your tumor with more radiation. You're like, well, isn't that what gives people tumors? And you're like, oh, that's true, but they are refining the technology a little bit. Anyway, the relationship between radiation and the development of cancer is well understood. A single CT scan exposes a patient to the amount of radiation that an epidemiologic evidence shows can be cancer causing. So, people out there that get CT scans, it's a big deal because you're just getting, hit hard 1,000 times more than a traditional X-ray. I just had to get some dental surgery done a week and a half ago, and they gave me the X-rays to look at my teeth, to look at my bones, and it's pretty good, not too bad. Just have to get a couple crowns on some molars down there, and guess what? They actually make them out of silver, which is pretty cool, really, because it's kind of like having a silver spoon in your mouth all the time, just kind of giving you that antiseptic property. So I was really excited about that, but the whole experience, made me think, well, what's the risk versus the reward? What's the balance of this? You lose all of your teeth, you're not eating very well, but how many X-rays do you get before, you could create a problem for yourself? If you think about your lifespan, I've been here 36 years, and when I was a kid, I would go 3 times a year and get X-rays on my teeth. Probably not smart. When you start counting up how many X-rays, I was in the military. They'd X-ray you for anything. You get X-rays, especially if you're in athletics, those people get tons of them. And they talk primarily about CT scans, but I think more about sonograms. It's a big question as to whether or not they're causing autism. A lot of newly and to be peer-reviewed research into these links that have been well observed to this point. And, it's quacky and zany, and you're kind of a weirdo if you talk about it. Oh, those are those alternative health nuts. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of magic salesmen that are, definitely, taking money from people and selling them junk science. There's a lot of that, unfortunately, and that outshines, unfortunately, a lot of the good things that we've found with vitamins and nutraceuticals and other, especially probiotics, and how those are affecting us. And we're learning a lot more about fats. That's where I wanted to go with this. It used to be in the 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s, you wanted a low-fat diet. Fat was evil. Fat is still kind of considered evil. And the fact that your brain has to have fat, that you need those fatty chains to have cognitive ability, and it's essential to your life. Those were being portrayed as bad. Fats are bad. You don't want saturated fats. Saturated fats are not making the American people obese. Okay, and I'm not an expert, so if you're a nutritionist or you're somebody with a government license, I'm not practicing medical research here or giving advice. But now more and more of this is coming out. And if you ask your doctor now, you say, look, that low-fat stuff, that's all going away, isn't it? They'll tell you, yeah, the science is changing. And as it changes, one of the good things is that you're seeing actually the medical professionals' viewpoints change as well. Now many of you and myself, and I definitely my wife, are keyed into the reality of the huge credibility gap between mainstream medical science and what is true, what is more true, and there is that huge credibility gap. So it warms my heart to see that the New York Times, will start looking back and saying, maybe these things aren't so great. Now there's a lot more research. Unfortunately, it just takes a long time. Mammograms, they're being pushed to the nth degree. You got to go get a mammogram for all you ladies out there. If you go to the doctor, you're getting pushed into getting these mammograms. And regardless of the pros versus the cons, and I think that if you have a family where everyone had breast cancer, yeah, maybe that's worth the risk. Yeah, and I can't, of course, give individuals a broad, and no one can, by the way, not even a licensed professional can give you a broad approach to, the pros and cons and whether this will be healthy for you to do or whether this is, potentially dangerous, what the risk factor for you would be. Nobody can. But there's plenty of doctors, like Dr. Drew, they go on TV and give people, Dr. Oz, give them medical advice about eat your whole wheat, make sure you're getting all those grains, just like them fat cows. And, they can't put the common sense together. My grandfather and I, here's one. My grandfather and I would go to a pen pasture called Owen Pen Pasture, Owen, obviously. And we'd go there when I was a little kid, and he would feed the cows grain. He'd give them grain, then he'd let me feed them. And it was a huge deal for me to get to go to ride with my grandpa. We go and feed these cows. Big deal. Wanted to do it every time I went there. But the idea was to fatten these cows up. So what did we give them? Whole grains. We gave them lots and lots of grain. And guess what it did? It made them fat. And it even made them docile. More docile. They sounded somewhat like this. No, those are sheep. I'm sorry. It's kind of sounding like that. But, they just sit there and chew it up. And if you just make that common sense connection, okay, we give grain to cows to fatten them up, but we give them to us to make us healthy. We give corn to the cows to fatten them up, to make them big, to make their thyroid activate. And we give it to us because it's healthy. We use it as filler in almost all of our foodstuffs. So it's not the fact that we're just eating crazy amounts of corn and drinking corn too, that everything's made out of corn. That connection hasn't even been made yet. So these are baby steps. Yes, your CT scans, maybe even your mammograms can be dangerous, and giving you radiation treatments can actually give you cancer. Okay, they're tipping their toes in the truth here. I like it. But, you just have to be, I think what happens is when you can step back from something, when you're not the expert in it, when your livelihood doesn't depend on it, it's easy for you to see. When you're not part of the medical community, it's easier for you to make a contrarian opinion. It's easier for you to take this information and make your own conclusion based on not the pre-described scientific evidence, because I don't make there is no scientific evidence. I'm just making that correlation because it seems like common sense. Seems like giving people the same thing you give cows to fatten them up, and the fact that we have obesity as an epidemic. It's going to be the next disease. It's going to be the next group of people that you can't chastise. And fat people are the last people that you can make fun of. They're the last bastion of bullying, really. You can't do it to almost any other group, and it's just a matter of time before the fat people, and they will be the majority, and they already are in the Western world of people. And it's not that it's your fault, or we should look at people that are. If you're obese and you eat insane amounts of food, and I've seen this, and you blame it on your thyroid, you're one of those people. It's just my thyroid, Doug. I know I've had my 17th ding-dong day, but it's just that dang old thyroid. Those people, shame on you, sir or ma'am. You get what you deserve. You get, that's the balance of the world. You do evil, evil will be done upon you. It's karma, or the lack thereof. But anyway, the fact that people are, I think, starting to wake up to this is very, very good, and it's really a sign that if we continue to be vocal, if you continue to throw truth in the face of lies, people will get it. It's going to take a while. Your doctor might still tell you that you want to eat low fat. I say eat all the fat you want in the world. I know people that eat lots of fat, and fat doesn't actually make you fat. And that is changing. It is changing. It's just frustrating because so many of you and I have already figured this out years past, and you're waiting 10 years later to hear, okay, well, that was the case. It's just like, oh, well, at some point, they're going to be microchipping kids. And now Chuck Schumer wants to microchip autistic kids. Well, that makes sense, right? Autistic kids will run off on you, and they can definitely be a problem for you. And I'm looking at something here. Hold on. Yeah. So, anyway, the takeaway from all of this is that most of you listening are probably ahead of the train. You're on the fast track, and it's going to take a long time for people to come around to these realizations that it's, carbohydrates. And they have. I mean, the what was it? The food pyramid that we used to have. They have a food pyramid now, which makes more sense, I guess. But we used to have the 4 basic food groups. You want to eat your 4 basic food groups: milk, the dairy. You got to have the meat, the bread, and the vegetable. And you had to have a balance of all of those. Actually, you'll do just fine without the bread. You can probably take down, 1/10 of the dairy and be just fine. You should probably really re-up those green and meat products. The paleo diet proves to be, it's the latest fad, but it seems to be the most in line with what our bodies would naturally do, or be able to produce or process, rather, what we would normally have at our ready. We didn't have mass-produced, factory-farmed, plastic-encased food. Things would be a little bit different. So there's your health and wellness. And you got to take your own health and wellness into your own hands. And I'm not saying that, you should buy a bunch of, a power pack of pills from some, company to make you smarter and better and faster. But vitamins absolutely have a lot of great benefits. And it seems that there is a huge agenda against that. One of the things that I wanted to wrap this show up with was this new Google patent that I think kind of encapsulates what's really happening versus what we fear because of the Snowden leaks. The leaks that came and are continuing to come to our web browsers and to the media headlines is that basically the government is in every way looking at your data, who you are, and it doesn't matter if you're at the Canadian airport or if you're in Tbilisi. They're watching you, and they can get into your stuff, and they're actively going after not just the American people's information, but using it for corporate and economic espionage. We're seeing the dichotomy of that kind of breaking down with some of these stories that are targeted at Germany primarily and Brazil and South America, those economic wedges, and I think really big points of contention for what's happened. But when you look at Google, I mean, Google is somebody that I really, really think that we should look at this group and what they're doing. So they have this new patent, and this is just one of many things that Google is doing besides buying Boston Dynamics and getting into the robot warrior business. But they have a new Google patent that suggests automatically sending your videos and photos to law enforcement. And this comes from Fandroid. We come across tons of interesting patents each and every day, but recently none have caused as much concern and curiosity as this one. Google recently filed a patent for a system that identifies when and where a mob event takes place and sends multimedia alerts to relevant parties. The patents are actually titled, quote, mob source phone video collaboration and inferring events based on mob-sourced video. Okay, so what's a mob-sourced video? Not that mob. In this case, a mob is essentially an activity or event attracting an abnormal amount of attention in the form of video recording and picture taking. Here's a quick blurb from the patent description, and here's our U.S. patent. Hashtag 201-400-25755. Quote, when there are at least a given number of video clips with similar timestamps and geolocation stamps uploaded to a repository, it is inferred that an event of interest has likely occurred and a notification signal is transmitted, e.g. to law enforcement agency, to a news organization, to a publisher of a periodic, or to a public blog. So, here's the idea. Me, you, and 30 other people all look up in the sky and we see a UFO. Okay, or whatever it may be. We see military blimps, and we all start taking pictures. There's a freaking Raytheon blimp, and it's falling down right in front of our house. All right, let me get my smartphone, because that's what everybody does now. Everybody grabs their phone, starts taking images. You know, could be a riot at a mall, could be just about any event. Well, I mean, if there's 100 of us taking a picture of it, it's probably pretty interesting, and it's probably something the government or maybe a news media organization, whoever, may want to investigate and start looking into. So somebody gets the signal. Now, here's the thing. How can you patent that? Really? I mean, that's pretty chicken crap. It's pretty bull-s that you can patent some kind of mob service that basically just, I mean, it's kind of common sense that there'd be something there going on, whether it's a fire, whether it's, a car accident. It could be anything that might want to, trigger some kind of alert service. So Google patenting this really does bring to the forefront this idea that we can not only, right now this is active crime. There's active crime going on. The next level is pre-crime, where we think because of this that we may have, we think because of these pictures, we may have a certain event happening, or that event will happen in the future. Believe me, it's going there. They're already looking at this. Who do you have ties to? Who do you talking with? I mean, you can pretty much figure out every action of a mob boss or some other organized criminal if you have metadata. I'm not going to go down the metadata highway today, but basically, you have all of these connections. You have this sphere of influence. You can do the same thing with this. Now, to take it to the next level, they can easily identify things like bongs or maybe guns or other illicit drugs, sounds of, sex. Easily, those things are recognizable by your smartphone, and that's going to be the next thing where, it's the obligation of these companies. They now become tools and arms of the state, and it becomes their responsibility to tattle on you. So, more so than the NSA, I think the big problem that we have, and not nearly, people want the NSA, we want to rein in the NSA. That's an unreasonable expectation. You're never going to take that want as long as the tool is there for government away. You're just not. The only way that you can subvert any of this is for you as an individual, along with tens of thousands of other people, to say no, to put the phone down, to turn these devices off. Because you're never going to be in a world where you have privacy, where you have this kind of technology that's so invasive in your life. So it's in your hands. You control it. It's not Edward Snowden. It's not the NSA. Okay, you can control almost all of the information that can be used against you by the powers that be. So it's really important to remember that, and that's one of the things that escapes the whole conversation when it comes to what's happening in the technology sector and the culmination of the security state, the technological technocracy, or whatever you like to call it, as we move to a world where it's our intentions that are judged rather, or our not even our intentions, but our crimes are predicted and it's the government's job. And you're already hearing that speak. We have to prevent crime. We have to prevent terrorist activity. Well, how do you? Well, at what point is this pre-crime? Where do you? And honestly, where does the general public get off expecting the government to be able to do this? It's two-sided. You can't have your cake and eat it too all the time. You can't have privacy and have a Google phone. You can't have privacy and have a camera operating on your Xbox 360 or tied to your Kinect. It's just not going to happen. It's not even always the state. Even if you had the most altruistic, nice people in the government, you can never, ever have that, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to want to exploit it, and there's always going to be one bad person that uses that intel. We saw that with the NSA. You had operators that were going after their ex-wives. They were going and spying on, people in their own personal lives for their own personal gain. And you're always going to be tempted if you have that technology. So the only thing that people can do to protect themselves is to build their own firewall, literally. All right, guys. We're right here at the hour point. I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. Hopefully we were able to discuss and bring a little light to some of the other topics that don't get the focus and direction that they should in the alternative or mainstream media realm. All right, guys, I'll be back next Saturday for another live edition of Blacklisted News Radio. I'll be online in the meantime at blacklistednews.com, and BLN Radio is our Twitter handle. The Twitter handle. Till next week, take care.